fact we are interested. So, Hermitage, how many years has Hermitage been released outside of the...
In Europe, longer than it has been in the States. We worked with Richard Betts for an Hermitage project.
Right.
For a little bit. And that went really well. And then we've brought it back into the fold under the selection labels. It is somewhat sold off, like we spoke about, somewhat sold off bulk that doesn't go in the domain blend.
Okay.
And also purchased fruit. The name Fauconnet, which is not so easy, I understand, sorry, not so easy for Americans to pronounce, but Fauconnet was a lord who owned Hermitage back in the heyday of the Hermitage era. So.
Now, would the same, depending on the vintage or whatever, would the same amount of vineyard sources or UD go into this possibly?
Well, I think it would just depend. Everything would depend on what Jean Louis, once he bases the blend, and then what he wants to sell off, and what he wants to sell off into bulk to. So it's never.
It could be
slightly the same, but not completely.
So several sources, though,
exactly.
to go into
right.
that. And how many sites actually in Hermitage are allowed to go into what is labeled Hermitage?
For us, we have 7 different parcels.
7.
7 for the red and 4 for the white.
Okay.
So 7 different soil types. And our philosophy is that Hermitage is a hillside, and it's a patchwork of different soil types. So you need that patchwork, and you use that to make your blend. Some producers use it as a single soil type, and that's fine. Everyone has their way of doing things, but Jean-Louis' family sees it more as a global view of a hill. So.
Kind of like Barolo, how it used to be in the old days.
Exactly.
With the one, just Barolo,
right.
You know, which was kind of cool,
as
opposed to...
Hermitage Blanche from the selection. And this one is named after Blanche de Castille, who is the queen who actually allowed the first vines to be planted on the hillside of Hermitage.
Okay.
That's where that name comes from. Smart woman.
Hence the, is that where the feminine comes from as opposed to Blanc?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's a bit redundant when you're writing Hermitage Blanc Blanche, but, you know.
So she allowed, what was it again? She allowed
the vines to be planted on the hillside of Hermitage.
Okay. So. And just so we can, I'm sorry, so we can tell everybody by AOC rules or by the law, what are the grapes, or the, you know.
Hermitage Blanc is always Marsanne and Roussanne.
Okay.
You can have as much of one or the other as you want, but.
Does it have to be a blend, or can it be a mono variety?
It can be a mono variety if you want. But the traditional Hermitage Blanc, and you know the reds are always so easy for the northern one. Just Syrah, that's nice. Yes.
Now, are there different? I know obviously the differences in the soil and the terroir and everything, but are there any like clonal differences in the Syrah, say in Cornas as opposed to Hermitage, as opposed to Côte-Rôtie?
Absolutely. There's a big difference for us is that we don't use clones. Not saying that being snobby in any means, but Jean-Louis doesn't believe in using clones. He field plants. So we take cuttings. We have our own nursery.
Okay.
So we take cuttings from our vines and plant them in our nursery, and then when they need to be replanted into those parcels. So, for example, for Hermitage Rouge, we have the 7 parcels. There's Bessard, Les Baumes, Pelliat, L'Ermite, several of those parcels, all of those. So Bessard will go back to Bessard. Pelliat, okay. A vine cutting that comes from Pelliat will go back to Pelliat.
Okay.
Because of he really feels that that vine has grown up in that environment and needs to go back to that environment. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I know that the clonal situation is it's obviously necessary because not everyone can take the time to field plant. It takes a lot of time to be able to do that. There are some common Syrah clones out there now, so I'm sure the guys in Coberty who do that, you know,
okay.
are the same as in Comas.
It was, I don't know if you would call it acidity, but there's a real kind of snap on the finish that brings it back to, you know, keeps it from just kind of being waxy and sitting there.
And that is from the soil. If you plant it on clay soil, you're going to have a more ponderous version of Hermitage Blanc because it's just, it doesn't need a rich soil. It's already rich enough in glycerol as a wine that it needs, you know, the grapes and the vines need to be on a soil that will bring in that minerality. Like you said, it snaps it back into the... So, Domaine Saint-Joseph. My husband's family started making wine in, like we said, 1481. So the domain began in 1481 with a parcel of what is now known as Saint-Joseph. Back in the day, it wasn't known as Saint-Joseph because the appellation only exists since 1956. The parcel that they originally had was this crazy parcel that we talked about that after phylloxera, they fallow. After the phylloxera, the 2 world wars, in the 1950s, no one wanted to go work on this parcel anymore. Jean-Louis undertook the process of replanting the parcel. So that still is not in the Domaine Saint-Joseph yet, but will be soon. Already 15 years in, so 5 more years to wait.
You know, when I take notes, or anybody, maybe when you feel compelled to describe a flavor more in terms of fruit and everything, because it's what people understand. But this is just well beyond that. Right. This is like the real deal. And what, you know, it's not because we're here and on camera and stuff, but seriously, you know, I just don't get to taste, at least here, that many things that often. You know, it's.
Thank you.
It's great.